Hey, welcome to Rockoli. I'm Jacob, your vinyl addict, and I want to share my process for comparing vinyl pressings and give you some tips and tricks on how to pick out the best version of your favorite albums. Stay tuned.
Get ready for Rockoli, bringing music to you. Rockoli, rock and roll, metal and country too. Get ready for the record of the week. Get ready for Rockoli.
So I talk a lot about best pressings on this channel because I'm a firm believer that your stereo is only as good as the source you give it, and it's all about what you compare it to. So you might have a copy of your favorite record that you absolutely love, and then maybe it's been reissued recently and you're curious, is this better? So maybe you bought it and maybe you couldn't really tell the difference. Maybe you were just blown away by the new version, or you were second thinking your purchase because the original was just way, way better. So I want to talk about my process on comparing, kind of walk you through step by step. If you've never tried to compare a pressing and just were unsure on the process, I'll show you how I do it, and I would love to hear your feedback. If you compare pressings, if you have any tips and tricks of your own, I would love to hear it. Anyway, let's jump into it. All right, so step number one, I think it's just getting some high quality pressings of the album you love. So a lot of times your audiophile labels are a good bet of a really good sounding pressing. Mobile Fidelity, Analog Productions, Speaker's Corner from Germany. You also have Analog Spark, Intervention Records. You have Music Matters for jazz. Impex Records also puts out some audiophile recordings, and then you have Sam's Records overseas. There's a good chunk of audiophile labels out there putting out the best versions of albums that you'll ever find. Now, on the other side of that, you have first original press, origin country. Typically, great rule of thumb for the best version of your favorite albums. And that's because when an artist records, it's in their country where they're from, and those master tapes are in that country. So they're usually comfortable sending those tapes within the country, but oftentimes they send safety copies for pressings outside of the country, or a digital file in modern day. So that's why origin country is really important. Now, other countries are just a little hit and miss. I mean, it depends on the genre of music, and that's a big rabbit hole. But it's still fun to kind of compare from those other countries and just to see, by chance, some random, Dutch pressing or African pressing is superior, but not too often. Michael Frimmer of Analog Planet, I shot him an email telling him I was making this video, and that was like his number one tip was origin country first press is a good rule of thumb that's going to be a phenomenal sounding record. All right, next you have the actual, once you have the records you want to compare, how do you do it? I personally start with the one that I'm the most familiar with, and I'll usually play the track I'm most familiar with first. Then I put on the new pressing, focus in on the bass. Is it something I can feel? Is there a depth to it? Then a lot of times I'll transition to, I'm a guitar guy, so the guitar, where is it located in the mix? Is there a guitar solo I can focus in on? What's the tone like? How is it separated from the other instruments? And just overall separation of the instruments. What I mean by that is kind of like, is there a wash over between the notes of like the guitar and the drums? Are they bleeding into each other, or are they in a distinct spot in front of you? And the vocals, does it sound like they're in front of the instruments, kind of like as they would be on a stage. Are they in line with each other? And then the sound stage. How wide is this listening angle? Does it sound like it's in a box in front of you, or do you feel surrounded by the music? Just in how far does that reach? I often close my eyes and try to place the instruments. Is the hi-hat over here, the guitar flanked to the right, vocalist in the center. And then there's a lot of things that you can't necessarily describe in detail, but they're more of a feeling. And I know that sounds like audiophile snake oil kind of thing, but you'll hear audiophiles talk about a presence. Can you feel or hear the drummer gripping the drumsticks? And can you hear the smack of the stick against the drum? It's more of a feeling that comes across on these ultra high fidelity recordings. That's sounds really silly as I'm talking about it, but once it happens to you and you hear the difference when there's this presence on a recording, it is mind-blowing. It's that hairs on the back of your neck raise up feeling, and it's that three-dimensional sound that I know I try to achieve. So looking at those pieces kind of one by one, and like I start with that track I'm familiar with, then I'll go back and listen to a whole side and compare those again, and back and forth. Sometimes it is just blaringly obvious which one I prefer, and there's these nuances coming at you, and again the clarity of the instruments, they're separated, there's tremendous bass with depth, and the sound stage just feels like you have this, IMAX in front of you, versus just like a portable television. Another general rule of thumb is 45 RPM. Some people love it. It's when you have your standard 12-inch record cut at 45 instead of 33, and then it's often spread over 2 discs or more. And the way it was explained to me is that it kind of like a flip book. So the more pages you have in your flip book and the faster you flip them, the better visual you get, the more defined it is. So then they transition to the record. So the more detail, and if you can go faster around, that image is going to be crisper, cleaner, clearer. And I've found that that's very, very true. It's amazing the difference between a 33 and a 45 RPM cut record. Just phenomenal, jaw-dropping. It makes me giggle just thinking about the incredible fidelity you can achieve. A lot of these things just really take practice. Like again, I close my eyes and you focus in and really focus on the bass and just the bass. Try to ignore everything else, and then the guitar and the vocals. Eventually you kind of get the hang of it, and you get to know what you like. And again, I'm sharing my opinion on what I like on pressings. Well, that might not be the same thing as you, or maybe our ears agree and we kind of like the same thing. The whole premise of this is to try to share good sound with you guys and encourage you to find better pressings and just enjoy the music. It's a fun niche of this hobby that I really enjoy, and it's not for everybody, but I really, really, really like it. So anyway, the example I have for you this week is T.Rex Electric Warrior. It was reissued by Rhino Records for Rocktober. And the hype sticker, cut by Kevin Gray from the original master tapes. And this is 33 RPM, but it's a tip-on jacket, Nice, thick, rich color. Gorgeous, and I love the sound of this one. Now the original press, they call it Porky Cut, and it's this is often considered to be up there with it, but not quite. People still love that Porky Cut, but this is still a really, really good pressing of this album. And if you come across this still in a shop somewhere for $20-30, I highly recommend it. It is definitely still a deal, but the Mobile Fidelity reissued Electric Warrior at 45 RPM, and everything we just talked about, you know, the sound stage is massive. It almost wraps behind you. Incredible. The separation of the instruments are just ultra clean and defined, and you can place every instrument, the hi-hat, guitar. Mark Bolan's vocals are just glorious. I am so pleased with this reissue. I really did not think it was going to be that much better than the Rhino, but it is shockingly good. I highly recommend this. It's probably sold out everywhere right now. I think it's limited to 3,000. Mobile Fidelity, the way that they work, if it's a limited run, they'll press like 1,500, 2,000 of the 3,000 and put those out, and then they'll press another 1,000. So, unless you're just really impatient, I would wait until it's repressed. But this is a staple of any record collection, and this version is magnifique. Well, that's it for this week, guys. I hope you enjoyed my explanation of how I compare pressings and sharing my thoughts on T.Rex's Electric Warrior. But I'd love to know your thoughts. You know, what are things you look for when you're comparing pressings? Or is comparing pressings just something that just doesn't interest you? Or are you curious and maybe you want to give it a try? I'd love to know your thoughts. But you just had a healthy dose of Rockoli, and I'll see you next time.